I apologize for interrupting. I apologize for interrupting our regularly scheduled programming of the Square Circle podcast by yours truly, Marie Shadows, to continue our talk about the New Japan Cup of 2025. But we are going to pivot for two different types of podcast episodes that are going to be talking about the industry, the professional wrestling industry, and also talking about what New Japan has planned. And I know that tomorrow, March 20th, it is going to be the finals of the New Japan Cup, and it has already been set. So this is what we're going to do. This podcast episode, we are talking about the JD from New York situation that apparently Mercedes Moné and AEW decided to get JD off of commentary for her main event against Indi Hartwell at House of Glory. Now, I usually like researching a lot, but since there isn't a lot out there and there's a lot of rumors and speculation and we could put two and two together, we are going by what we know. I'm going to say that again. We are going by what we know. And when I say we, it's basically myself, my community. We're talking about this. This is a topic that needs to be talked about because there is a bigger picture to look at rather than a non-victory like the IWC wants to make it out to be that they got JD off of commentary. But I'll dive into that in a little bit. So we have to talk about that because I just don't like things that happen and they happen in the wrong way and then people get away with it, and then knowing that if people can get away with it, imagine how dangerous it could become in the wrong hands where people just want to be petty and people just want to push whatever agenda that they want because they think that they're always right. Anyway, the second thing is that the next podcast episode will be talking about Tanahashi trying to recruit Just For Guys into joining Hontai. If you guys did not know, Hontai is the really old faction in New Japan Pro Wrestling that has a bunch of the older wrestlers, the older guard of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Think of New Japan Pro Wrestling as having different kind of generational eras with the wrestlers that we like to cheer for, that have now become older because everybody gets older. So Hontai is basically that. That means main unit. That's what Hontai translates to, main unit. Now, Chaos, because Okada is no longer there, because Okada was the leader of Chaos, but he never did any kind of leader things for Chaos. Since Okada's not there and Chaos was just Chaos, Chaos decided to join up with Hontai. Now you have a huge, big faction that is Hontai now, with the combination of Chaos being under there. So now Tanahashi wants to recruit Just For Guys, and the story behind that is because Bullet Club is the reason why New Japan Pro Wrestling is losing fans. I can't make that up, guys. I really can't. So that's going to get a dedicated podcast episode, and then I will go into reviewing the nights of the New Japan Cup that I missed, and then also we will be getting around to talking about the New Japan Cup. When talking about this JD from New York situation with Mercedes Moné, I did say my piece on Jay Herbert's Twitter space. If you guys don't know, if you're in the IWC, he does a Twitter space with a bunch of other pals like every other day or something, or once a week. It's frequent. And so I like to jump into Twitter spaces to listen and then also become a speaker if I am allowed to become a speaker and give my opinion on whatever wrestling topic we're talking about, because I really do enjoy talking about wrestling. I enjoy bringing up awareness for certain situations. This situation with JD and Mercedes Moné, in addition with AEW and House of Glory, is a situation we really need to talk about. But it's not the situation of, yes, let's celebrate that JD got off a commentary, because that is not a victory, my friends. That is not. How is that a victory knowing that JD is going to be back on commentary next month and Mercedes Moné is not going to be there next month? So it sort of begs the question of who truly won this little weird petty whatever we want to call it. It's definitely a power dynamic. It's definitely a power play. And that's really, really bad because anybody in the industry can see that, can watch that. And the snakes that you know that slither in the grass that you guys have not kicked out yet can definitely use that to their advantage. And they can definitely get anybody off of commentary or an interview spot if they feel like that person or this person or whoever they want to get kicked out has emotionally hurt them with no proof. No proof at all. Just because people say things and words are out there, whether you're typing them, whether you are speaking them, it is actions that hurt a little bit more than words. Everybody in this world talks shit. Have you been outside lately? Everybody talks shit. New Yorkers are the biggest shit talkers there is. There are other cities in the United States that have really big shit talkers. There are just people that talk shit. There are people that type shit on the internet as well, and you guys fall for it and in this rage bait are like, oh my god, they're such terrible human beings because of what they said. You do know that people can put on a character to go online, create an account, whether that is a real profile picture, an anime profile picture, no profile picture, or just something else as a profile picture, but you don't know if that person is real or not. And I hope you guys know and understand that because of the internet, people can now go to websites and buy bots that will put negative comments in any kind of comment section and even reply to you in a negative way. And those negative statements can be anything from calling you fat, from calling you stupid, from being this or that, and really like dig under your skin. People can pay for that, and then the people who pay for that sleep very, very soundly. So I don't understand why in the IWC there is a section of people, maybe a handful of people who have the anime profile picture, who have a non-profile picture of themselves, who have their favorite wrestler as their profile picture. All of them will say, please don't bully me, but yet then will bully somebody else and will take their words as gospel and be upset at them. If this person makes you that upset, all you got to do is just block, mute, and move on with your life. If you continue to see that stuff on your timeline because your mutuals are talking about it, you can go inside of Twitter to go into the section where it says mute this word. And you can put JD from New York. You can mute that. And hopefully it doesn't pop up on your timeline. But what I found over the years of being on social media is that people love misery. This is the new way of how to be miserable. This is a new way of how to be angry. This is the new way of how to virtue single. This is the new way of how to give me attention, even though they say they don't want attention, but they end up getting the attention. And by the way, I need to make something really, really clear, because I know I'm probably just going off on a tangent, is that both parties, the AEW and Mercedes party, along with Tony Khan somewhere in the background, and the House of Glory party with JD from New York, who's on commentary and been on commentary for probably years at this point, because it's definitely not months. He's not new there. He's been there. Both parties are wrong in this situation. Nobody is right. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to continue with the social media aspect, because these people that cheer for a non-victory, like getting JD off a commentary just because his words has consequences, they all seem as if they're awesome little angels with no skeletons in their closets. They want to be higher than everybody. They want to be superior than everybody. They want to have a holier than thou complex. And sometimes you can hear it in their speech if you're in Twitter Spaces, just either listening or having conversations. And it's like, you are no better than anybody else. You're not better than your brother or your sister on this planet. If you truly want to adapt the mentality of that we are all equal, we all have to be spoken to as a human being. regardless of what JD has done, said, because you guys want to bring up his track record and a video from 20 years ago where he's blurting out slurs, who did it? Who didn't do that in any of the chat rooms of Call of Duty or PUBG or any of those spaces when the internet was created and we were able to talk to people around the world and just say the most heinous shit ever? Or even when you were growing up in school and on the playground, that's even a lot worse. But no, on the internet, the people with the anime profile pictures, the people with the profile pictures of their favorite wrestlers and everywhere else, they are all goody two-shoes. They are all good angels. They try to stand up for other people. And I get it. You should stand up for other people when it is necessary, not when it's 24/7 and being like, oh my God, did you hear JD breathe? We gotta get our pitchforks and be like, oh my God, he's so bad. And it might seem like I'm defending JD. It's just that a lot of the nonsense is really, really ridiculous. And there's no way of controlling it except for pulling out this mirror and being like, you guys need to look at yourself in the mirror. You guys say you don't ever want to be bullied. And then when someone bullies you, or don't even bully you, or indirectly bullies you, you want to go and bully them back. Two wrongs don't make a right. And this goes for House of Glory and AEW. Two wrongs don't make a right. But you can't reason with nobody on the internet nowadays because they want to be upset. They want to be in their bubble. They don't want that world of theirs to burst because they enjoy the misery, even if they tell you they don't. So let's get into this. This is what we know. House of Glory had a show here in New York City, and my first initial thoughts to the whole situation was that JD was off the whole entire show. After further investigating and reading some more tweets, what it was that JD was taken off of the main event that had Mercedes Moné versus Indi Hartwell. Now, you would think that this match would get very high praise because it's Indi Hartwell's first match after getting released from WWE, and she's doing it at House of Glory, a promotion that is prestigious here in New York City with a New York City rambunctious crowd, which New York City fans always deliver. Now, we are not talking about how positive that is for Indi Hartwell. We're not talking about how positive that is for AEW being gracious to lend Mercedes Moné over to House of Glory to have this match, because who knows? We may never have had Indi in AEW, even though that could have been a possibility, but we don't know how long that would have been if we're thinking about this in a logical way. So normally, as a wrestling fan, we should be celebrating that we had that match. We were able to witness that match. But what are we talking about? We're talking about JD from New York getting booted off of commentary because of petty squabbleness. Because I don't know what other word to say, but it's pettiness. And it's throwing around a power dynamic. And to say that AEW is the big dog in charge, and in order for that to happen, probably more money needed to be put on the table to be like, look, we'll give extra money, get them off the table. However, what you don't do is do something like that, because then again, the snakes that are still within professional wrestling could get anybody off of any position because they feel emotionally attacked. Not even physically attacked, emotionally attacked. And guess what? If they don't like you and you never interacted with that person, they could say whatever they want and they will be taken seriously without proof. And that is scary. We got to start having some proof as to why this person is a bad person. If they done anything physically, if they doxed somebody, if they really decided to try and put hands, try and threaten, try and really do something action-wise to where you can say, I feel unsafe. But just because somebody talks shit doesn't mean that you should feel unsafe. They're just talking shit. They're a chihuahua trying to bark really loud, but it's talking shit. They're not going to do shit. Online, there are people that say that women are not delicate flowers, but in the same breath, they're like, oh, if you want women to be safe, you got to kick these guys out of here. So which is it? Are we not delicate flowers, or are we our delicate flowers that need some type of white knighting from the IWC? What should have happened if this was a professional setting rather than a takeover kind of situation? Everybody should have been brought into a room, sat down at the table, and had a conversation before the show started, because wrestling promotions do have a production meeting. So I would have suggested that after the production meeting, you have a quick little meeting with all parties involved. That means that maybe a representative from AEW being with Mercedes Moné to be a witness, the same way that you would have Master P and have maybe Amazing Red be the witness, and you have JD there as well. You have all parties involved, and you guys have a meeting and you talk about your differences. If Mercedes really had a problem with JD, that is how you would do it, because that is what adults do. An adult goes to another adult, whether you want to consider JD a child or immature or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. He's still an adult. He's past the age of 18, obviously. So you go to another adult, you sit down, you have a conversation, and you're like, hey, I did not like that you said this, this, and this. Why did you say this, this, and this? And you have a conversation about it. If you can't come to an agreement or a compromise, you have to agree to disagree, but at least you aired it out. And you might later on, thinking about it, you might be like, okay, now I understand his position. And then he could probably think about it too, saying that, oh, I understand her position now, why she's upset. And the understanding of why he got taken off of commentary, even though I think that is still 100% wrong. Because if he was so bad, and when I say he, I mean JD from New York. If JD from New York was so bad with this track record that is just very minuscule, you would think that House of Glory would have not hired the guy, or at least taken him off for good, like 3 months into his commentary gig. Because again, I think he's been there for years by now. But you would think that House of Glory was going to worry about their bottom dollar, because promotions need to make money. If someone is in a promotion that is working there and they are problematic, they know that that problematic is going to spread and they are not going to make any money. Because fans will definitely have an outrage, fans will speak up, and fans will let their voices be heard. But in this situation, he's still there because it's not really affecting the bottom dollar of House of Glory. Most people really don't give a shit that he's there. And you might consider that to be wrong, but then again, why are you being judge, jury, and executioner over somebody that just says things for shock value so they could tune into his show? And last I checked, he doesn't even promote the fact that he's on House of Glory. So there goes another kind of loophole, if you want to say. Like, he doesn't mix what he does at House of Glory with his YouTube show that is basically for entertainment. If you can't figure it out by now that it is for entertainment, you just want to be mad for the sake of being mad. There's a lot of people that just don't like what I do, and they let me know, but then I never see them again. So it's like, you could do the same thing with JD from New York. If JD from New York gets you so upset, you could just move along. You can mute, block him. You could also go into your Twitter settings, like I said, and just mute the words JD from New York. The bigger picture of this is that it's not getting discussed enough. It's more about, yay, we have a victory here. We got him off of commentary. Thank you, Mercedes. As if she is the voice of everybody online, and it's like, no, she's only for herself. And that was evident, because what would have been a very smart business decision, you play it out on commentary. You have JD be that character. You have Solid Monster, which was told to me during the Twitter space that he was on commentary too. and have him be the pushback and have him be the reasonable one. And you present this story of whatever they want to do, that Mercedes has come to House of Glory. She wanted to throw her power around. AEW wanted to throw her power around, all this kind of stuff. You make it into an angle, you make it into a story, because now you have all the fans' attention. Everyone is going to be talking about everyone involved. And then the moment that we can get an interaction between Mercedes and JD, you know, it'll still give JD the attention, but you're making it into wrestling, because that's what wrestling does. Wrestling is good when it tells really good stories like this, personal stories like this, and it'll be must-see TV. And who knows? It could translate over to AEW. Like, the potential of it being an actual story, if both parties were okay with it, would have been a very good idea. Everybody would have made money. JD would have been on his podcast show. He would have had more viewers. And I'm looking at this from a business perspective. I'm not looking at this from any one of them being right or defending anybody. It's more of a business aspect rather than like, oh my God, he's such a terrible person. Get him off a commentary. I don't care. Get him off. Oh my God, where's my soy latte? You know, it's people like that that don't understand that wrestling was founded on personal petty shit. But the bigger picture of this also, aside from trying to make it into an actual wrestling storyline, is that this situation and how it played out and what we know does not do AEW any kind of justice, because all the baggage that AEW keeps slugging along with them, and the dirt sheets do not help in their baggage that they are carrying with them. All of the allegations, all of the speculation, it sort of puts AEW in this light of, hey, maybe everything that has come out, all the bad publicity, maybe it's starting to feel like it is true. Like, there are ego trips, there are power trips. Tony wants everyone to get along, but he doesn't like JD because he feuds with him on Twitter, and it just feels like everything, all the bad stuff, has some weight and some truth to it. This is why I say that AEW needs to start taking responsibility, needs to start cutting off the dirt sheets, and need to air out everything and tell us the truth and be transparent with us. And once that happens, they will start getting their fans back. The moment that AEW is true to themselves and the wrestlers are true to themselves rather than living in a delusional world, once everybody is true to themselves, AEW will regain the fans back. Their numbers will rise on cable, since they're still on cable, and also they'll probably get some more subscriptions, and they'll see people watch it on Max. As for right now, it just feels like everything is working against AEW, not for the betterment, but for the worse. How can you, as an AEW fan, in good faith, still follow a company that will throw their power around, that will try to silence people, that the sickos will try to go after people and dox people just because they don't like AEW, that wrestlers are able to pull people from commentary tables that don't show up for their New Japan Pro Wrestling partners during Wrestle Kingdom week after making Wrestle Dynasty a thing for Wrestle Kingdom week, that cut corners and got a really bad ring for AEW Australia and never gave refunds back to hardworking Australians and was just like, oh, we're moving venues, so that means that you have to go too. How in good faith can you still support a company that has all this negativity, all this baggage, but yet then want to blame it all on one person and not try to be like, hey, AEW, I think it's time for you guys to accept all of the baggage, accountability, be transparent with us, and cut off the dirt sheets. You guys will believe the dirt sheets faster than an entertainer, which is kind of weird. And I also brought this up during the Twitter space of Jay Herbert talking about it. And I did ask the crowd in the Twitter space if JD has ever doxed anybody. To my knowledge, he has not. And anybody down below in the comments, whether you're listening to this on youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast, marieshadows.substack.com, and also on Spotify and all major podcasting platforms. However, Spotify is the only one that where you can leave comments at and also a voice message. But to my knowledge, I have never heard of JD from New York doxing people. To my knowledge, I have never heard JD from New York block people, unblock them just to talk shit to them. I've never heard anything about JD from New York going into people's DMs to talk shit about them and do the block and unblock thing. I've never heard any stories of JD from New York being a creep in the locker room of House of Glory. But yet then, all of the dirt sheets that have doxed people, that have went crazy, that have crashed out, that will block and unblock and talk shit to people, that have done way worse stuff, get a free pass. But JD from New York still gets shit thrown at him just because you don't like what he says or how he says it. That's the beauty of the First Amendment, of freedom of speech. We get to say things and have conversations about it. It may be uncomfortable to hear it, but not everybody grew up in a suburban area. Not everyone grew up as you grew up. People come from the cities and we speak a whole different language, and we use our language in a colorful way that you may not approve, but that's totally okay. That's what makes us all individuals. Why are we still on this sort of mindset that we have to conform to what you want us to say, how you want us to say it, and really follow this, but you don't even follow it yourself? Because the moment that someone pushes back against you for any kind of different thinking, the moment that we show you this mirror, this hypocrisy, you want to move the goalpost and be like, oh no, blah, 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 and tell us some bullshit. But yet then you want to really bring down the hammer on a guy that just talks shit, and you can't get over the fact or understand how to handle someone that talks shit. If someone talks shit, you just move along. It's like, cool, man, you're talking shit. Awesome. Mute, go about your day. Because I can tell you that all of the people that you get really, really upset at, or even a fake outrage over because you just really don't like them, they are sleeping well at night. You're wasting your energy and you're picking battles that you want to fight everybody. And it's like, why do you want to fight everybody? Why don't you just focus on the content that you want to create? And if you are not creating content, get a hobby at least, and be chill sometimes. Not everything requires some type of, if you ever played the game Among Us, not everything requires an emergency meeting to talk about things that really don't matter. If JD did some heinous shit in the act, an actionable heinous shit, then yeah, it's cause for a conversation, because it's like, whoa, dude, that's wrong. What are you doing? But if he's just talking shit on his show and doing what he does and goes to commentary in House of Glory and goes back home and makes money and does content and that's it, then what's really the big deal? You will feel a lot better if you just say you don't like JD from New York. And I will say this. Somebody in the comments might be like, oh, well, you had a little run-in with JD and his ex-buddy. And yeah, I did. But my problem was more with his ex-buddy than JD. And just to reiterate, this whole situation, both parties are wrong. AEW and Mercedes are wrong. House of Glory and JD are wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. But I'm only talking about this because it's going to become an industry problem if we don't nip it in the bud, because nobody should be using their power like this to get anybody off of commentary. Because like I said, Somebody who's just emotional, who may not like you and you don't even know who they are, might just be like, hey, I don't like this person, get them off. And that person has never done a really bad thing towards the locker room of the promotion that they work for. They could just be like, yeah, they have this podcast and I don't like what they say. They're so mean. And then it's like, well, show me proof. Let me know what you don't like and we can have a conversation about it. And then I could change my tune about whatever it is. But nobody wants to have a conversation these days. Everyone either wants to be so emotionally unkept, wants to block you, wants to dox you, wants to have this emotional anger, this fake outrage, fake virtue signaling, rather than having a conversation to be like, hey, I need to understand why you said XYZ, because this is not me. This does not represent me at all. But nobody wants to do it. So a couple more things is that on Twitter, it was floating around from JD from New York's IG that he just put up a simple GIF of the Charmin Ultra Soft bear with the tissue, the company, and we could definitely infer that they're soft. I totally get it. Also in that Twitter space with Jay Herbert and his friends, I do want to also mention that I did say that JD is also a smart man. You may not like that comment that I said, but let me explain something to you guys. JD understands business. With the way that everybody on the internet makes JD from New York out to be this horrible guy that he's always yelling at other people. He does yell on his shows, by the way, but the internet makes him seem as if like he's always yelling at people. He's the worst. He's so bad, blah, blah, blah. There has been no reports. There has been no other wrestlers from House of Glory that said that JD threw a fit. JD is a smart man by understanding that it's a business decision. He kindly got off of commentary without any kind of pushback or retaliation or yelling, because there would have been somebody that would have said something, because it's the internet. Somebody always likes to document everything. And so because he did not make a fuss, he knew to play ball, because he knew he's going to be there next month. Mercedes is not going to be there moving forward. So again, that is a business decision. That was a good decision on his part, because it would have got very nasty really fast if he would have made a big issue of it. But he understood, and see how nicely that went through. But the reason why we're all upset is we saw the power dynamic play out, and it's wrong either way. That's why both parties are wrong, because JD has been with House of Glory longer than Mercedes Moné, and then Mercedes Moné comes in and does the power play move. She could do that to anybody that she wants. And then other wrestlers, like I said, those snakes that you know in the grass, they could do that too, without any kind of proof, just because they don't like somebody. And that is wrong, because if we want to be a society where we see people as human beings and people who have jobs, doing something like that is very inhumane. It's very much like you are superior than them. You are bigger than them. You have your nose pointing up in the sky than them. You think of them as being beneath you. And that's not the kind of mindset that we should have, especially if we say that wrestling is for everyone. I get that people say things and you may not like how they say things, but you can send them a message and being like, hey, I don't like this because of this, this, and this, not in an emotional way. Make sure you send it in a logical way with facts and maybe a perspective or two as to why something that is said could be taken as this. But then again, when we have freedom of speech, we shouldn't be on eggshells to try and accommodate everybody around the world who may or may not really support us and what we do with the microphone here, because some people are just fake regardless, and they will just talk for the sake of talking, but they're never really going to truly support you. Those that truly support you understand where you're coming from, because you have some common ground and you could be like, okay, I agree with this. And it's okay if you don't agree with the rest of the stuff that I say or other people say. It's okay. But at least there's an understanding of some principles and good virtues that we try to still have within this world rather than trying to be all robotic like. But the moment that someone doesn't want to be robotic, even though they're like, you can't say this, and they go and do what they say that they won't do, it sort of leaves you head scratching, like, but you wanted me to be this angel like you, but then you went and go do something that you say you're never going to do. Like, what? Okay, let's summarize. Number one, this whole entire podcast is not a defense for JD from New York. Like I said, it is two wrongs don't make a right. Number two, Mercedes Moné and AEW, House of Glory and JD from New York are both wrong in this situation. No matter how we look at it, it's still a wrong situation. Number three, the bigger issue that is not being discussed is that now that something like this has set a precedent within the wrestling industry, an industry that I love and an industry that most people love. Now that this has become a precedent that anybody can do anything because they got the power, they got the money. Oh, and who does that? Billionaires do that. They do that a lot to be like, look how big my dick is. It is wrong. And now other people in the industry, those snakes in the grass that we have yet to fully kick out, or even some new ones, can definitely get anybody they want kicked off of any position just because they feel emotional and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be an adult. The possibility of this happening is there. The option is there. And the door is there, and it's a little wide open. So who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of months with promotions and people wanting to be like, I don't like this person because emotionally they did this, emotionally they said that, and their words, oh my God, their words completely hurt me. Rather than being an adult and being like, hey, I heard what you said on your podcast. I heard what you said on your show. Can you please dial it down, or can you please clarify these statements because this is not me? And if you want, we can have an interview where we can talk about the stuff you got wrong. That is what an adult does. Number four, and I really did not touch on this, but by revealing that nasty work, because it is nasty, like, you don't do that. Again, two wrongs don't make a right. You go be an adult and you talk about it. But number four is something that I did not mention yet, and that is that this is being played out in front of us, and this is the definition of what it means when a promotion has backstage politics. We saw it played out on the internet because, again, in this day and age, there should have been some type of video, somebody videotaping and talking about it and putting it up online. But no, we have word of mouth, we have what we know and how it happened, and that's all we're going off on. But I want to address all the bigger pictures rather than the non-significant sort of victory that the IWC wants to celebrate, which is getting JD off of commentary. So we just saw firsthand backstage politics. And now somebody might be like, well, Vince was doing this back in the territory days by buying up all the territories. But Vince wasn't that freaking obvious with it. Back in the territories, once a promotion was starting to lose fans, starting to lose money, because fans equal money, where fans have to spend money in order to buy tickets, and that money goes to the promotion, goes to the wrestlers, and then the promoter booker will take their cut at the end. But because in certain territory days back in the day, the money will dry up, the fans will move on to other places. And yes, Vince McMahon had a hand in buying talents and talking to talents and giving them exclusive contracts where they cannot be freelanced out. But because we are in this freelance 2025 kind of era, kind of mood where Mercedes can go to House of Glory and do this. This is nasty business. This is that carny side that we talk about of the wrestling business. We saw it played out. And that's something, again, that's not being talked about. We saw backstage politics being played out in front of us. And this is how dark it can get. This is one of the dark sides of professional wrestling, that stuff like that can definitely be played out. Now, somebody might be like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. It is, because now you just gave everybody that wants to trample somebody in the business to take their spot, to not have them get paid, to not have them get a job. They are going to use it to their advantage. No one is going to bat an eye. They're going to let it go through, and no one is going to challenge it. Because how can they if you're never going to provide proof, an actual proof of what this person has done to you on a level where you can't work with them or can't even talk with them to get this resolved? It's professional wrestling for a reason. There are people in the professional wrestling world that have differences that will still be professional to still work with them, but eventually they do get around to talking out their differences to understand, because you want a roster that works well together. And again, like I said, if there are no bad stories coming out of the House of Glory locker room about JD from New York, how is getting him off of commentary for one match because Mercedes is there, how is that a victory? It would have been a victory if he had a consistent track record. Oh, which, by the way, I guess this brings me to number 5. Number 5, JD's track record. Everybody at IWC wants to be like, look at his track record. Look at his track record. Is he still the same person that he was 20 years ago or however long ago? They want to be like, look at his track record. If the pattern was consistent, and if he had stories coming out of House of Glory where he works to do commentary, then there will be a problem. But because nothing is consistent, and because people like to throw around words, that these words were once powerful, all the buzzwords that get thrown around, they were once powerful, but now they are not powerful at all. It has to be consistent. It has to be consistent. And that means that the rhetoric shouldn't be changed. That means that he should be throwing out all the slurs. He should be throwing out all the hate that apparently gets thrown around. Like I said, he talks shit. And if you're not used to somebody talking shit, you're going to think that everything that they say is going to be hateful. The only reason why I bring that up is because I'm from New York City, born and raised. And there's a lot of people out here that talk a lot of shit. You just have to understand that it's not personal. Most of the time it's just an act to talk shit. Sometimes these guys out here don't really do anything. They just talk shit. And then you get to realize and hear that it's not hateful. It really isn't. There's a way to be hateful. There's a way to definitely come off as hateful. But most of the time, talking shit is not being hateful. You're just talking shit. It's an art to understanding, but those on the internet that want to be within their glass houses don't know that. They don't travel outside their glass houses. They think that in their glass houses, every single thing that somebody says has to be proper. You have to be like, I am going to the store. You can't say that, oh, I'm going to the corner store. I'm going to the bodega. I'm going to the chicken spot. The moment that you switch up and use that New York language, they're going to be like, oh my God, you're so bad. You're a bad human being. You're terrible. What do you mean you're going to the chicken spot? Oh my God, what's a chicken spot? Like, I don't know. I live in this glass house. Again, to reiterate, I'm not defending JD. It's just that people on the internet think like you can't talk a different way. Are there times where JD can fix how he says certain things? He can. But like I said, that's just how he speaks. That's how most New Yorkers out here speak. It takes a while to get used to how people speak. But then again, if people were to change up their language for those who live in glass houses, then we take away the First Amendment. And this is just me being completely honest, completely transparent in this whole entire conversation about the JD situation. And again, we're talking about JD. We're not even talking about Mercedes versus Indi Hartwell in a match. And that is sad. But then again, I'm looking at this from a industry perspective because I don't want the bad people that are still within the industry to use this as an opportunity for themselves and really kick good people to the curb because they just don't like them. Oh, and by the way, number 6, if you don't like JD from New York, I have a solution that will help you. You want to know what it is? Just say you don't like the guy and move on. That will make your life so much happier. You'll feel better. You'll have your energy back. It won't be draining. You won't have this guy live rent-free in your head. Just say, I don't like JD from New York. I honestly don't care about JD from New York. I have my own podcast on it, but it's mainly just because of his ex-buddy. But I will say that I didn't like fans getting swindled out of an opportunity to bring a different perspective to his show when he was like, yeah, let's have a roundtable to talk about the state of AEW. And then all of a sudden it got derailed because of his buddy. Like, sometimes bringing up different perspectives, different voices can open up different doors, different ways of thinking, and even maybe agreeing to different opinions that you thought that your opinion was the best. But sometimes someone's perspective and the way that they put something in a different way of thinking can be like enlightening. So, that's the only thing that I have against JD is that don't swindle fans who really wanted to participate and give a different perspective, because conversation is good in the wrestling industry. Conversation is good in roundtables. And it just brings us together to be like, hey, we may not be on the same page, but I'm willing to be professional and I'm willing to be at this table that you created for a debate, to be like, hey, let's talk about some of the things that AEW needs to improve on without getting super emotional, without being a character, without trying to yell to get the point across. Because when you yell, no one is really listening. When you are talking about it, when you're trying to reason about it, when you're trying to be like, hey, let's think about it this way. Or what do you think about this fantasy booking? Don't you think that people would enjoy this kind of fantasy booking? And we're having a good time. We're having a good roundtable. We are learning from each other. That's all I wanted when that whole incident happened, was that, hey, let's learn from each other. Let's learn what's wrong with AEW, what can be fixed about it, how we can do this and that. And it would have been a very good learning lesson for everybody at the round table. It would have been a very good learning lesson for AEW, because it just seems that Tony Khan goes after JD. So why not have the round table on JD's show to be like, AEW, this is what other people are saying, that it's not just him. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you uplift the community. This is how you help out wrestling promotions. And I get it. Wrestling promotions don't have to listen to the internet, don't have to listen to everyone with a podcast. But if we can try to do some good where promotions could be like, hey, maybe they have a point. Hey, maybe that debate on JD's show had a point. Let's try to implement some stuff. You never know what can happen unless you open up your voice and you lend it without any kind of agenda behind what you are doing. And I probably went off on a little pivot, but everything all relates to what we're talking about, and that is trying to make the wrestling industry that much better without having agendas, without being babies, without being petty. It is just talking with somebody, getting their perspective and being like, hey, I need to understand this. Can you clarify this? Why did you say that? Rather than being like, look at his track record. Oh my God, look at this, look at that. Okay, do you have anything new? Has he done anything new to deem him a horrible person? Like I said, if he has not doxed anybody, if he has not made anybody in House of Glory feel uncomfortable, if he has not tried to block and unblock you just to talk shit, if he has if he has not done anything heinous or harmful in an actionable sense, then how is he the bad guy? Again, if you don't like the dude, just say you don't like the dude and it's going to be okay. Life is going to be okay. Now, for the wrestling industry, listen up. Do not try to use what Mercedes Moné and AEW did as a power trip to try and get anybody off of commentary and interview spot or try to get them kicked off. If there is a good history, a really good history with really good proof that that person is very problematic, and it's not just what they say or who they retweet on Twitter and on social media, then do not use this to your advantage, because people are going to be people and people are going to be mean, and people use things to their advantage because others give them the empathy and the sympathy to do so. That's what we call here in New York City people walking all over you. We don't need that. So stand your ground and still be a good person to the best of your ability, because we are all flawed. And again, this podcast episode talking about the JD situation from House of Glory, both parties are wrong. This is in no way a podcast to defend one party over the other. I have given you ways to think about how this doesn't make any sense. I have given you ways to think about, hey, maybe there is a point to just keep on scrolling whenever JD from New York pops up. Who knows? And if you listen to the whole entire podcast, first of all, thank you so much for listening to the whole entire podcast. But if it did not end up maybe changing a different perspective, saying things maybe a tiny bit different, altering your mindset for the future so that way you don't get upset for the sake of getting upset, because it is very trendy to do so when you are following the crowd and you're not being an individual, and you still want to be very, very in your world, in your bubble, very angry, very virtue signaling, and want to get all those high fives for the 15 minutes of fame. Then at that point, if you really don't want to at least change something about your perspective on anything that I've said here, at that point, it's a you problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for listening to the whole thing. Thank you for understanding the position that I am taking. Again, two wrongs don't make a right. Both parties are wrong here, but the industry as a whole, now we have to keep an eye on it, because if this can happen at House of Glory, just imagine that how this can happen at any other promotion around the world. Just because you don't like what somebody has said, the whole world talks shit. You got to learn how to navigate it. And if you have yet to learn how to navigate it, then it's always going to be a you problem and nobody else's problem. We do not have time to deal with any kind of pettiness, and we do not have time to emotionally regulate you so that way you can calm down and maybe be a sane person. That is not our job. That is not our responsibility at all. So again, I would say this: the whole world talks shit. It's not that big of a deal. If you don't like someone talking shit, you could keep it scrolling, because they can scream into the darkest pit on Twitter and social media, and no one is really going to care. The only time that people care is because somebody has to retweet it, somebody has to give it attention, and that's across all social media platforms. So again, the world talks shit, and you have the free will to choose what you do with that information. Ladies and gentlemen, I am currently working on my Fourth Wall website, so it is currently down, so I will not be plugging that in. But if you enjoyed this episode, and if it resonated with you, or if it didn't resonate with you, let me know down in the comments below, whether that is on Squared Circle Podcasts, on Spotify. Spotify now allows you to drop comments. YouTube.com/Squared Circle Podcast if you are listening to this on there. marieshadows.substack.com. You could always leave your comments there as well. And also on Twitter, because I'm going to put the link up on Twitter once this goes up. You can leave your comments on there as well. And like I said, we will be talking about some more New Japan stuff and get back to our regularly scheduled programming of talking about the New Japan Cup. I just wanted to pivot because talking about issues that can arise in the wrestling industry is what I am doing and making aware, and we all need to be aware of it because you never know. Your best friend could be taken off just because someone doesn't like your best friend. It's going to be petty. It's going to be high school. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. You can share this out, support Square Circle Podcast and Marie Shadows down in the description box below by clicking on all the links. That is going to be campsite.bio/Marie Shadows. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this podcast episode of the Square Circle Podcast by way of Inside the Locker Room, which I think this would be appropriate because it is sort of like a hot take, even though both parties are wrong. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys on the next one.